Hi, I'm Avital Ash.
I'm Jessica Richards.
And this is...
He's right behind you.
Ah! He's right behind you. Today, we are joined by a very lovely lady. She's making a face. It's a good face. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Marina Michelson.
Hi.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here.
Of course. Introducing this bizarre movie into my life.
Oh, yes. I can't wait to talk about it.
Well, Marina is a writer, actor, director.
That's right.
Is there anything that you're working on that you want people to know about?
Yeah, sure. I'm working on a short film that I'm hoping to shoot in the new year, in the early new year. It's called Stagiaire. Do you know what staging is?
No.
Staging is like a restaurant kitchen term for, it's like an apprenticeship. It's kind of like an apprenticeship or an internship. And it's very common in restaurant culture to like stage at a fancy restaurant.
What language is that?
It's an old French term.
Okay.
So like all kitchen structure is based off of French kitchen structure, which is
Cool.
based
I
off
didn't know
of
that.
military structure.
Whoa.
And so it's called stagiaire is like an apprentice kind of.
In a kitchen.
In a kitchen, yeah. And it's like, it's very common in all restaurants. And like fancy restaurants, people come to study under the chef by staging. So you'll like stage for like a month or 6 months. And even like in regular restaurants, it's kind of like an audition. Like you'll come, show your knife skills for a day, yada, yada.
Oh, cool.
So anyway, it's a short about a woman who is like, it's her first day, and it's also going to be her last day staging in this high-end kitchen.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Did you do any research for it?
Well, I've worked in restaurants for so long, and
Oh, right, because your parents own a
my
restaurant.
parents own a cafe, and so I've just picked so much up just like being around kitchens.
Yeah.
And one of my dear friends is a chef, so some of the story is inspired by an experience she had staging at a restaurant,
Wow.
and some of the characters and experiences are informed by just working in a restaurant.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Do you have any horror kitchen stories?
I mean, this is like a horror adjacent kitchen story, but I mean, kitchens are like notoriously very masculine spaces, and there's sharp objects and very tight spaces and like hot pans and heat everywhere.
Yeah.
And so I think of them as like these really intense environments. And the story is about a woman who gets hazed very seriously on her first day, and she's like
hazing,
keeping her.
man.
Yeah, very tied to the movie we're doing today.
She's like really like keeping her chin up, and like she's doing a really great job taking it until she gets cornered in the walk-in, and she's got an implement in her hand that she's got to fight with.
This is the short you're doing. It is sort of horror.
Yeah, it's horror adjacent.
Cool.
Yeah. It's a sexual harassment story, and like sexual harassment in real life is a real, can we curse? Fucking horror story.
Yeah.
I mean, like
100%.
So it's really it's based on my friends' experiences, on my own experiences.
And it's always so funny, too, that restaurants are so masculine when, like, society says that cooking is so feminine.
Totally. Yeah.
It's always
I
crazy
think that's
to me.
really interesting too.
Yeah, I was happy even when you said your friend who's a chef, and then you said she, because I feel like my mind went to, oh yeah, they're all men.
Yeah.
All the like big
I,
chefs.
I worked for a minute as a baker at a
Cool.
restaurant, and all the bakers were women and all the chefs were men.
That's the trope. So like the other girl, there's like another girl that she becomes friends with, but she's in pastry because that is kind of the trope. And a lot of like when I was talking to my friend about building this story, we were talking about like, how do you make kitchens more feminine? And I think that the system is so inherently traditionally masculine that it's like you can't just inject a woman at the top and hope that the culture is going to change.
Right.
The culture is already built in this extremely competitive, masculine way that I don't quite know what the answer is, but I don't think it's just like throwing some more women into the mix.
Well, it's like Top Chef is usually like a man usually wins Top Chef.
Yeah, it was a big deal when a woman won.
Yeah,
which is
and it
crazy.
took a while. 'Cause
It
I
took
love
a
that
while.
show.
Me too.
And there's only been like still a handful of women that have won.
Totally.
It's always frustrating.
wow.
And they always make a thing of it because it's not the norm.
And the women are so good on that show. It's
Totally.
Like, I don't
and
understand.
women came to be editors in film because it was not considered a creative job, which is crazy. And it was like men did all the creative jobs, but like, oh, you can, the same way that you might throw something to an assistant, you can throw the edit to a woman because we
that
don't
is
really care
crazy.
about that.
I
Yeah.
didn't know that.
And then now, of course, it's a very respected art form, which it should be.
Totally.
It's insane
And
that
it's
it
such
wasn't.
a huge part of the filming process.
Yes.
I
mean,
cannot
it's-
edit at all. That was one of the things in college where I was like in
I
a
love
computer
the
lab,
edit.
and every few seconds my hand was up for someone to come help me. So I was like, ugh.
Oh, you mean
really
you can't like
hard.
technically edit,
I am so bad at it.
but not? Do you mean the creative parts too, or just the technical knowing?
The whole thing was like really off-putting to me.
Maybe you'll find this interesting, Marina. Maybe you won't.
I'm getting better because we edit the podcast.
Yes.
I've had to like do it.
I was trying to show Jessica some like because I edit on Premiere, she edits in GarageBand, but we were going to try and both do Premiere because we alternate editing
Which
episodes.
didn't work out. I'm still in GarageBand. Spoiler.
So I was showing her some stuff, and then I was like, "And here, you just hit Control C, Control V, you paste it." And she was like, "Wait, what?" And I was like, "Oh, just the copy and paste." She was like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "Don't you like for texts or anything?" She was like, "Oh, I go edit, copy."
Good for you.
Still
Good
do.
for you.
I love that you gasped.
Still am skeptical of technology and how it's going to
I
stick
kind of
around.
appreciate it. This day and age, like 10 years ago, I would have laughed and rolled my eyes. But this day and age, I'm like, as far as you can be from technology,
Right.
good for you. I'm impressed.
Although if you're editing, it's so much more time
100%.
consuming.
Well, that's probably why
Still
she doesn't
do
like editing.
Exactly. That's why I thought it was a pertinent story.
I still
love
don't
it.
understand computers or anything.
Let's start with your relationship to horror.
Great.
Yeah, did you like grow up watching it or?
I grew up being forced to watch it.
Whoa.
So my older brother, he was 8 years older than me. So he was like a preteen or a teen when I was a kid. And he always had to babysit me. So he forced me to watch some really scary shit. Like, I mean, all of the classic horror films, like the Jasons and Freddys and
Love them.
Chucky's, had to watch them, learned about them through him. Never loved them, hated them as a kid because I was so young and it was like being force fed to me.
Freddy's
there
so scary
context?
when you're a kid.
Yeah.
all
Oh,
so
Freddy's still
scary.
so
That's
when you
scary.
sleep.
Yeah, no, that still
And
scares
Chucky
me.
when you're a kid
Oh
is
my
so
God.
terrifying if you're a kid who loves dolls.
I when I first moved here, I moved to like Hollywood because I didn't know any better. So I was right by the Chinese theater where people dress up, and there was a little person who would wear a Chucky costume, and he scared the shit out of me, and he could see that I was scared, so he would chase after me with his knife up and down like the psycho motion. And then I heard he died, and I was happy, which is really awful. But he was so mean to me because I would always
Maybe
like
not
try and
happy,
avoid
maybe
him.
relieved.
Yeah, relieved. I was relieved. Yeah. I mean, I was just relieved to not have him like chase me around anymore. It's still scary. I was
I'm
like,
still scared of
That
seeing it.
idea is so scary. I had a friend, Erin Teeter, we were growing up. I came over one day and she was like, my doll moved. And I was like, what are you talking about? And then we hid behind her bed and like stared at the doll for like 6 hours one day.
really funny.
Because
yeah.
she was so convinced it was alive. And that whole day was terrifying.
That is terrifying. But yeah, he made me watch that, and so
did he give you context? Was he like, this is a scary movie and
No.
you should know?
no
Or
context.
what was
No context.
He just
It
was like, we're watching a movie.
He was annoyed that he had to babysit his little sister. He was a preteen, and he would just put on whatever he wanted to watch. And so I remember watching a lot of Tales from the Crypt.
Oh, that used to
Horrifying.
scare
Just
me
the
so
intro.
bad.
Yes.
The intro was
You've
so
said the same
scary.
thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
When he would pop up at the end of that intro,
Disgusting, just like that little bit of hair.
and the laughing.
Yeah.
I've seen one episode and it still kind of haunts me. Just the one
The
episode.
song to the
Terrifying.
intro haunts me because it's like a Jack in the Box. I'm like, I gotta get out of here before it pops.
Yeah.
And he made me watch Unsolved Mysteries, which is so terrifying.
It's
That
even
is really
scarier in a
scary.
way.
Even scarier,
Yeah.
exactly, because I'm still to this day convinced that it's true.
Yeah.
And
That
some
all
of them
those
are.
stories
They're
are
all based
true.
on true stories.
Aren't they?
Yes.
No? I don't know.
They're all based on true stories. Some of them might be like, it's the tone might be more exaggerated,
Right.
but wasn't it like him in front of like a car with headlights like on him or something?
Yes,
It's so
yes,
scary.
yes.
But it's done in a way with like music. So it's heightened. It's
Yeah.
a true story that is scary, but it's done in a way that is going to haunt
Well, the
you.
one that I remember the most is of the Queen Mary, in Long Beach. And it was all about these ghost stories, how the Queen Mary is haunted. And so the fact that you're saying it's true is like doubly frightening me now. Because I just remember, I see it all in my head, just like the staff of the Queen Mary coming in, and there was like one grand room, and there was one very elegant woman like dining on her own.
Yeah, there's recreations.
Yeah, it's all
That's part of what
recreations.
made it really scary.
And so they like come and they like serve her dinner, and they go out. The server goes out, and then they come back in because they forgot something, and she's gone.
Oh, wait. So it's all like kind of supernatural.
No, some of them are missing persons.
Okay.
But it's done in a
But
way
they
that
include
feels
supernatural
supernatural because it's like the person just disappeared.
So they're not necessarily saying that it was a ghost or that it's haunted. They're just like, we don't know how these people disappeared.
Yeah, it's an unsolved mystery.
Okay, Jessica.
It was terrifying. I mean, that's what that is. I remember actually not liking horror for a long time because like it was forced upon me. And I remember like on those nights, I remember this one time that my brother, I remember the like living room door was open and he was gone, and I was running around the apartment looking for him and he wasn't there. And suddenly I ran into the kitchen to look for him, and above the kitchen sink we had a window that like went down the hall of the apartment, and I saw my older brother Elon just with blood all over his neck like this, and I was like freaking out, terrified, screaming, and then I saw a bottle of ketchup like right there in the kitchen too. So I hated horror as a kid, but then inevitably, like in the 90s, I fell in love with like 90s teen horror. Like,
Which ones?
Yeah.
Oh, I was obsessed with Scream.
Yes.
I was like,
I love Scream.
Scream 1, Scream 2, Scream 3, okay. I had
Scream
the
4
soundtracks.
is great, by the way.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even know
I
there was a
recommend it to
4.
everybody.
I'll have to watch it. I loved Scream. I loved all those movies. I mean, I didn't love the I Know What You Did Last Summer as much as the Scream franchise, but do you remember The Faculty?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, we're doing
That
The Faculty in like a week. or
Really?
two.
Oh, I
Yeah.
actually really want to watch it. It's like
Yeah.
a star-studded cast.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
And The Craft. Who doesn't
Yeah,
love The Craft?
right.
And there's like a really good shout out to The Craft in this movie.
Is there? I don't remember it. Well,
Oh,
we'll
we're
get
gonna
there.
talk about
That's
it.
cool. Yeah, it's funny because Jessica and I have very little overlap. We don't really like the same horror movies, but we both love Scream and that same kind of like...
and The Craft.
Yeah, and The Craft. Exactly.
We like nostalgic things. I think so. It's like stuff from the 90s.
Yeah, and I think that must have been a seminal moment, like when we were growing up,
yeah.
of Scream and The Craft being these actually like female-centric
Right.
big movies.
Yeah.
that it makes sense that we all like them.
It's the Nev Campbell effect.
Yes. Well, totally. She's so good. She's, I think, my favorite final girl. And of course, it's like viewed through the lens of nostalgia. But I do think Scream is also just like a smart, tight movie.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just like everything combining.
Yeah, like I feel like I would still love it if I saw it now, but I can't tell.
wonder.
I can't be. I'm not impartial.
It was also so funny, and I just
Yeah.
also remember the music being so good. Like I
Yes,
love
Nick
the soundtracks
Cave.
to all of those movies.
Yeah, they're so good. Okay, this is sort of unrelated, but I had a dream last night that I keep thinking about, and it really scared me. And I wonder if it will sound scary aloud or if it's only scaring my brain. So we're gonna find out.
Cool.
But I had this dream. I was babysitting for somebody. Like a newborn baby, like a brand new baby. I was holding it and I started walking outside, and I was like in this long alley, and there's this guy who looks very menacing and 3 other guys. And the guy's like, "Hi." So I said, "Hi." And then he goes, "What you got there?" It's so creepy to me, even now as I'm
It
saying
sounds terrifying.
And I was like, "A baby?" And then he started coming towards me. And then I ran, and then they all like chased me. And then somehow I was like on Sunset Boulevard, and there was like filming going on. So I just like ran into the set, and the director's like, "What the fuck are you doing?" But I saved the baby and it was fine. But I keep thinking about it. It was so vivid and frightening, and I just had to get it off my chest.
It
Do
does
you
sound
dream
frightening.
about babies a lot?
No.
Because I looked something up about it because I was having sporadically I have dreams where I'm holding like my baby, and then I wake up and I'm sad.
Yeah.
It's like a euphoria. I'm not a children person, but like in the dream you feel like a euphoria and you wake up and you're sad. And I looked it up and it's like a biological thing.
Interesting.
It's nature being like, you should have a baby.
I have
Oh,
been thinking about
interesting.
babies a lot more recently.
I mean, holding somebody else's baby in a dream is terrifying because it's just like so much responsibility.
yes. And I definitely felt like I have to save this
Yeah.
baby. Like this is all on me. But yeah, I do wonder. And especially when you have a recurring dream. I have lots of being in hotels and packing constantly.
Oh, wow, really? I always
don't
have
like
my
it.
teeth falling out.
Oh,
That's a control thing.
Oh,
I
really?
looked that one up too because I have that dream where a tooth falls out and I'm like,
I have it when like all of my teeth are wobbly and it freaks me out.
because that's when I looked it up. It said like it's a lack. You're scared of losing control.
Interesting. That
I
makes
thought
sense.
it was an aging thing for some reason, but maybe that's something else.
My mom always says it's a money thing, money worries.
Oh.
So
Wow.
Dreams are really interpretable.
I'm reading Stephen King's On Writing now. It's so good.
cool. I love that book.
It's so good. And there's a part where he talks about when he worked, I think it was while he's working at the laundromat, that he ends up finding a whole bunch of loose teeth, which is
Ugh.
so creepy. And how he thought about like making it into a necklace and giving it to his wife. But he was like, her sense of humor only stretches so far, which I was like, good move. Not
Exactly.
making that into
I
a
would be
necklace.
terrified if I
Yes.
got that gift.
Oh, horrifying.
Are these all the children you killed?
Yeah.
But it's also creepy. Like I went through my mom's drawer one day when we were like cleaning stuff out, and I found like our baby teeth, and like that was creepy.
Ripe for a horror
Because
story.
it's like she's
Yeah, I
hiding
agree.
that. It's like she's the tooth fairy, so she's hiding it. But then like she
Yeah.
forgets about it, and then later she's got like a drawer of teeth.
Totally. Looking back on it, it does really seem creepy.
yeah,
My mom
the
used to do
tooth
that
fairy seems like a perv, like
Yeah.
someone that you should be afraid of.
Maybe not a perv, but like a serial killer. Kind of like
Yeah.
has to have a token.
too.
Yeah.
I smell a good horror movie idea.
Yeah, I think so. We'll ruin the tooth fairy for children everywhere.
There's one like that with Darkness Falls, I think, where it's like about children's teeth and someone coming to get them.
Oh,
Ooh,
I'll have
I'm
to look it up.
terrified.
So you started to come around during like Scream era.
Yeah,
And
I
then did it
started to
keep
come
going?
around. And nowadays, I mean, like, I feel like we're really living in a resurgence of really cool horror.
Yeah.
And I think it only makes sense. I think that we're living in like really dark and disturbing times, and our sense of and so like I think that we look to art and like movies for them to be a mirror to our realities, so that we can like experience things in the darkness of a movie theater that is an easier way to deal with those things than it is in life.
Yeah.
And so I think that it only makes sense to me that culturally we're really interested in like dark and scary movies right now. And I think that like we're in this era of horror that is doing a really cool job of reflecting all of our societal ills.
I agree.
And that really excites me.
Yeah, that's kind of my favorite thing. We haven't done the Babadook on this podcast yet, but I love it where and that's more of an evergreen thing where it's like very clearly a symbol for depression, but there's also can be like oppression and racism and things that are ongoing. Like I just love that metaphorical exploration and like putting it in this, taking something that's sort of intangible and putting it in a tangible form of a killer or a disease that's eating you or rotting your flesh or whatever.
Yeah, I think that's really exciting too. And I think that right now, we're also living in like an era of cinema where we're really genre bending, and that excites me more than anything because I consider myself a writer and a fan of drama above all. That's just like what I love. But I love mixing like genre bending with drama and horror, playing with like horror undertones. And I think my favorite films these days are doing that.
Have you seen Baghead?
No.
It's a cool like blending of genres. It's like
anything
Duplass
Duplass
movie?
is always like that. Because I remember reading an article or something, maybe it's a podcast or something, where he said that. He was like, there's no new ideas, so you have to take two old ideas and put them together.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the first time, we're going to do Cabin in the Woods soon. I haven't seen it in ages, but the first time I saw it, I think I didn't like it because I wasn't expecting it to be such a blend. I was like, this is going to be about a cabin in the woods.
Right.
This is a small story, which like I love a contained story. But yeah, I think it really is exactly that. There's nothing new, so you kind of have to blend things.
Yeah.
Which I think Raw does too. It's sort of like this coming of age story and a horror movie.
Totally. And in interviews, she doesn't even consider it like a horror. It's not a straight horror by any means, but I totally think it's a horror film.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
And she doesn't think about it as a horror film because she thinks, and what I heard her speak about, and this is, I think it's, how do you pronounce it? Julia Ducournau?
It sounds
That's
right.
going to be my guess.
I don't know.
Julie Ducournau said that she thinks of horrors as like traditionally supernatural movies. And she says that there's not an ounce of the supernatural in this, that it's like a totally grounded and real story, and that her intention was not to make people jump or scare them.
Which
that
is
was
so
a
interesting 'cause
byproduct.
I think she does do that. There's also a moment that somebody calls out in an interview that that the interviewer says made them uncomfortable, and she's like, "Oh, really? That says more about you than the movie." And I was like, "I don't know. That moment made me really uncomfortable too." Like, and she's sort of just dismissing it as, I mean, I wonder what her personal life is like.
Yeah. I mean, like, so I feel like
I want to say that to people, by the way.
What?
Whenever someone says they don't like something or something about my work, I'll be like, well, that says more about you.
Yeah, I think that's a great defense.
Yeah.
But I think that, like, okay, horror fans are like generally die-hard fans. And I'm the kind of person who, like, when people would ask me what kind of music I listen to, I'd be like, all types of music. Like, whatever's good is what I like. And sometimes you go through phases, but I ultimately like all music. And that's kind of how I feel about horror. Like, I'm not a diehard, this is my only genre, but I love movies. And horror movies are such a big part of cinematic tradition from, you know, way back when.
Yeah.
And so I kind of think that maybe that's her trying to say, like, I'm not a straight horror
Right, I
director.
get
Like,
that.
I direct films, and horror is a part of filmmaking. And so...
And the
Well,
horror is
that's
so
what
well
this podcast,
done.
like, we've tried to have very open ideas of what horror is.
Yeah.
Because, like, you know, like you would ask me a lot of times, like, is that a horror? And I always say yes.
Yeah, just
To almost anything, I always say yes. Because I think if there's death involved, if something is like tense and scary, it doesn't have to be Jason. It can be a thriller to be scary. If someone's a murderer.
And I'm on the same page fully of like, I just love movies, but now it's been fun to dive into horror because I've avoided it for so long. So there's this huge gap in my cinematic vault for like horror stuff.
Yeah, and what I love about films is I love movies that are like a visceral experience, right? That like make you feel whatever is happening on screen. And horror really does that more than a lot of other kind of films. So that's definitely something I love about it. And I understand why people are like so fanatical about it, because it makes you have an experience.
Right. And why people are so, it's a very polarizing genre. There's so many people that are like, I hate horror, I won't watch a horror movie. And then people that are like, I'll watch any horror movie.
Yeah.
And that visceral experience, I think Raw, I probably had more of a visceral reaction than anything else, maybe, like than any other horror that I've seen.
Well, before we get into Raw, talking about visceral, do you have anything that you like grew up with or that you've seen that you, like any images from horror movies that really stuck with you?
And not necessarily from horror movies, like anything. Yeah. An image, a scene, something that you read, something that you imagined.
Or something that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll take anything.
One of the for some reason, this sticks in my mind as my scariest experience. But when I was 15, I went to San Francisco with like a new friend and some of her and her older sister and her older sister's friends. So we were like way too young for everything that we were doing. And we accidentally got this motel in South San Francisco, which is not San Francisco at all. It's like the adjacent city that you have to like drive 15 minutes out of town to get to. And so we were hanging out in San Francisco on like our first or second night. And we were 15 and her sister was like in her young 20s. And we started hanging out with some guys that we met. We like bought some weed off of them. And before you knew it, we were like back at the motel hanging out with them. And we were all high, way too high. And they were like playing their guitar and everything seemed really innocent. But each of us like later recounted to each other that we had all gone into the bathroom being like, when are they going to leave? Like, how are we going to get them out of here? Like, so we're like hanging out. And finally, eventually, somehow my friend's older sister gets them to leave. And it is such an amazing feeling of relief. And we're like all just like finally excited that they left. And we're like telling each other how stoned we were. And then we like go to bed. And my friend and I are sleeping on the pull-out couch that's like right by the door. And the girls are on the big bed. And we like turn off the lights and we go to sleep. And suddenly there's a knock on the window right by me and my friend. And it is still the most terrifying moment that I can remember.
Oh my gosh.
And we were all fucking paralyzed. And finally my friend's sister gets up and she cracks open the door and it's the guys. And they said that they just wanted a pillow because they were going to sleep out on the street.
Oh my
No,
God.
you can't have a pillow. Get your own hotel.
They were like trying to get back in and she didn't let them in. I think she gave them a pillow and maybe they weren't there in the morning.
Yeah.
But just that moment of like thinking that it was all over and feeling in danger is the most terrifying moment I remember.
That's a great answer. And it's also, to me, so tied to sound. It's like that knock, that sudden awakening too, just as you're in the clear. And it's like a horror movie trope.
Sound
like
everything's so much more terrifying. I mean, like there's a lot of gross images that I could think of, but it's sound that is so much more terrifying. And when I'm watching a movie and when I'm really terrified, I'm closing my ears more than I'm closing my eyes.
Jessica mutes it.
I did mute some of this movie. One scene in particular, I was watching it and I was like, nope, and I'm pressed mute because I couldn't take it.
The gagging?
No, the scratching.
Yeah, I get that.
I can't, the nail scratching dry skin sound, I've been scratching ever since. It really bugged me. I don't like it at all.
I don't feel like I'm allowed to do that with this podcast. I'm like, I have to experience it all. I have to like hold my
and I
eyes
feel
open.
like I am not getting paid and I have to preserve my sanity. Because like this is something I'm doing for fun.
Totally.
So it should be fun. And
Yeah.
I'm not going to like chicken out and like read the thing and then not watch it.
Right.
I'll watch it, but sometimes I have to change certain elements to get through the day.
It's funny, when we started, I fully expected it was going to be the reverse because I was scared to watch stuff and I would read the Wikipedia so I'd know what was happening and I'd like peek through my hands or not look, just cover my eyes. And now Jessica's like making the screen tiny, reading the Wikipedia.
Yeah, I did make the screen tiny for part of this.
That's funny.
But it's that thing of like I feel like I'm at an age now where I'm like I have nothing to prove.
Right.
I have to do what's best for me.
I find that the more I watch horror as I try to write and like write horror adjacent things, if you watch them with a very like script breakdown critical eye, it can help you not get scared.
Totally.
Because you're totally anticipating everything and it like sucks the air out of it.
Right.
100%, which is part of why I'm really excited to move into this movie, because there are moments where it didn't matter. It was like,
I agree.
yeah, where I'm like, I'm just watching this as a student, but my body is still reacting.
I couldn't eat after. I mean, that's it. Like, I remember I had like a vague dinner plan, and I was like done afterwards, and I just smoked a cigarette, which I rarely do on my patio. And I was just like, this is a bleak French movie, and I'm not having dinner tonight.
Is there, well, and then we'll move into the movie, but a thing that scares you most?
In terms of like watching horror
Or in life? Oh, both.
I
guess,
am not scared. I'm it's not that I'm not scared, because I'm an open believer. I'm not an atheist. I'm agnostic, which is like I'm open to believing something, but I'm also a really big skeptic. So like supernatural and generally slasher films don't really scare me. What really gets to me is body horror. Like, I am extremely sensitive. I'm extremely pain sensitive. So anytime seeing body horror and like social horrors like Rosemary's Baby, which is like a wee supernatural, but I also think it's like about a cult.
Right.
Is
It's
very
about a
terrifying
husband
to me.
who is just so willing to sell you out for his own gain.
Yes.
Spoilers for
and
Rosemary's
Stepford
Baby.
Wives. Stepford Wives is, I think, one of
Yeah.
the most frightening movies, because so things that I can imagine
That's a hard
more
one to watch.
realistically or can
Yeah.
physically experience terrify me more than like supernatural.
I'm the
ghosts.
same. I never thought to say body horror, but I guess that's what it is. I always say being tortured. Anything that like that physical pain, that slow, agonizing death, or even worse, no death, is always what gets me too.
And that's kind of why I wanted to talk about this movie, because I realized only recently that body horror was what really interested me in horror. And we were talking about The Fly.
That one's
Have you seen it?
yeah.
So to me, the part that's the most terrifying in it is like when he gains all this arm strength and he arm wrestles with someone and he just like breaks their bone, and you just see like that's the most terrifying part of the
Yeah.
movie to me.
And it gets a lot worse.
Should we dive in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so we open with a car accident is our first scene.
Yeah.
Right. That's a great scene.
Yeah, and after, I had so I got really into Cronenberg after watching this movie for the first time, because I realized that like I had this body horror fix.
Yeah.
And having just seen it, I realized that this is like a direct homage to Rabid, which I was talking to you about, which is like Cronenberg's second film, which opens in the same way with just like a stark road and a motorcycle accident. And I feel like it's very
cool.
similar to this film.
It's great to see that people borrow and steal. It's like a nice reminder. Like, it doesn't have to be original. It just has to be like your take on
This
something.
movie is
Well,
filled
it's
with
also
them.
homages instead of like stealing, if you're doing it in a way that's like, I
Copying.
love it.
Right.
I love what you did. I want to like
It's
add
building
to it.
upon it.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Or reinterpreting.
And that first scene, I remember
She
from
gets
the
up.
get-go, is filled with so much tension, because
Yes.
you can't really tell what you're looking at. You see a road, you hear a car, you're trying to figure out what's going on. You
Kind of
see
see
a
someone
figure.
moving. Yeah. But you're like, where is this going?
And it does a beautiful job of just like playing with the tension of that moment. And
Totally. And there's a moment later, I can't remember, maybe it's she's on a bus with her roommate.
Yeah, she
and
sees
they
the car.
see a car accident, and I thought, oh, this is the thing from the opening, but
Right.
then it comes up later.
Right.
Where I'm like, oh.
Wait, but I thought that was the one when they're on the bus. I thought that was the scene from the opening
I thought so
because
until
it was a blue car.
Oh, maybe it is.
Because then the one later is a different color.
Okay, that makes sense.
I didn't pick up on the car color. I assumed the same thing that you did, Avital, which is like, this is the instance, this is a recurring incident.
Yeah, I thought like, oh, this was foreshadowing this moment. And then when we get another car accident, I was like, oh, it was this moment. But I didn't notice. I
didn't
car
notice the color
blind.
of the car,
Yeah, I don't remember cars
Yeah,
ever.
no, because I kept looking for it. Whenever something starts a movie, I'm always like, when's it coming back? Because I know it's coming back, and I'm so
Me
excited
too.
about it. And so then when she drives by and it's a blue car, it looked the exact same to me.
Yeah, now that you're saying it's the same car, I'm like, oh, it must have just been the sister.
Yeah.
That time.
Yeah,
But
who was
yeah,
just
it's
doing it
interesting.
on
It makes
her
sense like in any iteration.
And that's
but
how
they
she,
mean different
and
things.
then it's like, okay, so that's how she's been surviving.
Yeah.
Without getting caught.
Yeah. Although I feel like you could still easily get caught that way.
Yeah.
Because like saliva, I don't know.
I don't know. I
Didn't
guess
somebody
they're not
see it?
assuming that like it's a human. I guess they're just
Yeah.
like,
Because if the
Thinking it's an
crash
animal.
that's not a
kills you,
theory.
if the crash kills you,
Right. But
And
then
there's
when they
nobody
find
there.
the corpses and they're like half eaten.
I think if
Yeah,
it's
that's what I was
gory-
wondering about.
I don't know my whole take on it, and I don't know if this is right or anything, but I thought if you're in a car crash and there's gore, and it's like these car crashes were like rough, then like you might have like skin that's been, taken off. She's not. I didn't think she was eating like the whole body.
I
or
agree.
Nothing. I thought maybe she was like probably taking bites out of like different places that were already injured.
It looked like she was like licking a little blood, like eating a little brain.
Yeah.
Because then the cops they'll just rule it as a car accident.
Interesting. I feel like when there's
Because they
bite
hit the
marks
tree.
on several corpses, they're going to be like, this is weird. And initially, maybe you could think it's an animal, but our mouths are structured differently.
From all of my true crime, it also depends on the place. If it's a place where there's a lot of crime, they don't have time.
But I'll also say that like
car
this
accident.
is where like horror fans are different than horror filmmakers, because horror filmmakers are just like keep going, like keep it
Right.
moving. They're not gonna. We don't have time to
Right.
explain why the police don't catch on, because
Right.
like why the hell
And
don't
you know
the
what?
police
I don't
catch on
care.
in this one
I
place
don't really
where the car
care.
accident happens? Totally.
Like, I think about it, but then I'm like, whatever. The movie is compelling enough. I'm not going to get hung
and
up
like
on this
yeah, we
detail.
can't. If you get caught up on every bit of logic, it's not
Yeah.
gonna work.
Right.
But
I
that
mean,
is
well,
a good
then
way to
there's,
not be
like-
afraid.
Yeah.
Then there's like a lore to it where it's like, there's that spot on like Road 86 where so many people have died.
Right.
And nobody knows why.
Right.
Which is interesting because
it's
that
like
could have been
that.
another way into this movie, which she doesn't do. But it's like there's no right or wrong. That could have been the intro. Is like there's this spot on the freeway where
Right.
people keep getting into accidents, and
That's going to be my homage.
Yeah, do it.
I support it. And then we meet our heroine.
In what is like such a clean and concise intro
Yes.
to the whole film of like her being like, no, I'm a vegetarian, no meat. Cut
Yes.
to eating a bite. There might be meat in what she's
Yes.
eating.
Yes.
Mom starts yelling at the
Yeah.
cafeteria
Freaks
worker.
out. Which I think, like, at first you're just supposed to be like, okay, so she's got a really overbearing mother.
Oh, I just thought they're so principled, and
Yeah,
I liked
I think
that.
I think a little bit of both. I think it
Yeah.
all applies. It's like she's got an overbearing mother. She's really principled.
The beginning is so significant because the mom hints at all this when she's eating mashed potatoes and then there's meat. Something meaty was in the potatoes and she
Yes.
spits it out and the mom's like, did you eat it? Did you eat it? And it's like
Right.
freaking out and it's like, she could have been allergic and all that stuff.
They're
and
strict vegetarians. Is the
yeah, it
setup.
comes off as like the mom is just so anti-meat and then it adds up later that she's trying to spare her, but also fuck these parents.
Also, if this
you should-
hazing,
should really tell them about this
Right.
stuff.
The sins of the
Yeah.
parents.
Oh my god.
yes, totally, and also
Prepare somebody. It's like Carrie. It's like having your period and no one told you what that meant. Like
Yeah.
you should tell people.
Well, also, if this is like the hazing ritual, we haven't even explained this yet or gotten into it, but if this is the thing that her parents went through, which it seems like they did, wouldn't they be like, don't go to veterinarian school or go to a different
Okay,
school?
the hazing of a whole class of students is bizarre to me.
Yeah.
yeah.
But it's cool. I mean, it's very effective in the film.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It's interesting because I bet you it's more of an American trope, this kind of hazing, than it is a French experience.
I wonder.
But in interviews with her, she was like, I have an imagination. Like, I wasn't hazed like that,
Oh,
but I have
yeah.
an imagination. And I think of hazing as such a product of like American
It does
college
seem very
culture.
American.
Well, and it's also, but it's very secluded because I went to college and it's very like the sororities do it, or if you're on like a team, like cheerleading team, you had to do something, or like
Right.
football team, you had
Versus a whole floor.
But it is
yeah,
a specific.
you have to want to be in something.
But the
to
argument
deal
is
with
that
it.
it's like a small class, right? Is like
Yeah.
that there's just it seems like that there's 2 years or something like
Mm-hmm.
that, right? A lower class and an upper class, and it's like a small class
Right.
of just veterinarians.
It was just God. I mean, it was like everyone who was an upperclassman turned into a real asshole.
right.
yeah.
Give
Which
them a little bit of power.
is the same in like Dazed and Confused.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was just thinking Days
Totally.
Confused, where it's every freshman.
Yeah.
And that everyone was just
They get
fine
power
with it.
hungry.
All the adults
Yeah.
are fine with it.
Right. I know. I found that so French. They were like
Yeah.
so laissez-faire about the
Yes.
hazing going on
It's true.
on campus.
I know they're showing up to classes like covered in blood,
Right.
and the
And in
teachers don't bat
diapers.
an eye.
I know.
Yes, I think it's also like you were talking about sort of social horrors. It feels very like the dangers of mob mentality,
Right.
Oh
and
yeah.
100%.
just being flung into something because that's what you do and going along with it. And I think
Well,
it's
especially later when they cover her in paint and put her with that guy and are
Right.
like,
Yeah.
come out with your colors mixed. Like,
that was the one scene I had seen before.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because
So
I had read
upsetting.
up on this movie a bunch a few years ago. I was really curious about it, but scared to watch it. And I watched that scene, which is like so beautiful cinematically.
Right.
And also like so disturbing mentally.
Yeah.
oh yeah, sexual assault.
I mean, so much
Yeah.
of this film is really beautiful cinematically. That first, and I think it might be the case in both of the like rave scenes.
As soon as she's like in the club before she finds her sister, to me, I was like trying to escape that club, and like the hellhole of writhing, sweaty bodies is already more horror than I can
Right.
stand.
It's a oneer. That's crazy. That means that like that entire, so I was reading that they had about 300 extras and that the music was actually playing and that she was directing every dancer on screen. And I had to watch it again.
Shows.
Because it's such a beautiful, just one her following her through the party. And I'm
so
pretty sure the
immersive.
second one is too. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's not like they're just extras. They're like actual background actors.
Right.
Everybody's like on their game.
Yeah.
The worst is like an otherwise beautiful scene where like an extra takes you out of it.
Right.
Bad acting.
That's what she said. She said that like I don't want to watch a dance scene when like someone is like dancing to a completely different beat in the corner.
Yeah, being able to actually play the song makes such a difference.
Yeah.
But you usually don't know what you're going to be able to clear definitively in order to use it, you know.
Yeah.
So that's cool that it
And
worked
that's helpful too if you're an extra to have someone be like, here's what I want you to do. Because
Exactly.
you're over there like, I feel so stupid.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know
They
what
were
I'm
also
doing.
saying that in an interview I heard that they shot for 37 days and they needed all the extras to be committed the whole time. So like she personally directed all of the extras to like get them more invested in being a part of the movie.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
I love that.
And the school, which like I think is such a brilliant setting for a horror film.
Yes.
Because I'm always obsessed with animal symbolism. I find I realize that it's in all of my movies. And so to get to set for the entire setting to
Yes.
be with
Filled
you know,
with animals. Also, it's nice to watch a movie that makes me glad I didn't go to college. Because usually I have like FOMO and I feel
Funny.
dumb. And I was like, oh, good. This is a nightmare.
That's funny.
With all the animal stuff, I think the hardest scene for me to watch and I was very relieved. I Googled to be like, is this animal cruelty? I don't know if I can watch this movie. Was the sedating of the horse. And thankfully, they just filmed. This was going on in a classroom and they like let her film it with her actors in the background. And I was like, thank goodness. But that was horrific to me.
Me too.
Yeah.
All of that stuff is really terrifying to me. I mean, even like at one point, someone shoves their hand
Yes.
up a cow's ass.
Yep.
Yeah.
The sister does it.
Yeah. And then like there's another moment where she stumbles into a class late and she's like head to head with a cow who's pregnant in the middle of an ultrasound.
Yes.
Just all of that was like,
I didn't realize there was an ultrasound. That's cool. I didn't
yeah,
connect
it's
that.
so, I don't know. It just makes, because so much of, I think, this film, in general, a cannibal movie, but also a movie that's about vegetarians in a veterinary school is about, you know, trying to explore what it is to be human and how similar or different that is to what it means to be an animal. And so anytime we're reminded with imagery of these huge beasts that are not that different from us, but somehow we think they are, is terrifying and it kind of nauseating and interesting.
I know she says she didn't mean for this to be like a pro-vegetarian movie, but I feel like to me, morally, I am a vegetarian. I am not in practice, but I think that they're like all on the right side of history. And this really reinforces that to me. And the difference, like you were saying, you know, pointing out that we're not that different, but the difference, I think, in seeing a horse sedated in a scene and what's so painful about it is like horses aren't actors. You could have an actor pretending to be sedated and they get paid to be like hung upside down or whatever. And then they go home and maybe it was traumatic or uncomfortable, but they have money. Like the horse just has no autonomy in this situation and they don't understand what's happening.
But that one didn't bother me.
Interesting.
I think I felt we did Pet Cemetery earlier, and in that one they sedate
The new one or the old one?
the old one, and in that scene they sedate a cat, and it's supposed to be that they're actually killing the cat, and that one got me because he is like literally stabbing a cat with a needle, and the cat makes a noise, and it is like, yeah, the cat's fine. It was just a sedation thing, but it's like that cat didn't know what was happening. I didn't know it was a scene and that it wasn't being murdered.
You didn't feel the same way about a horse?
Well, because the horse was just it didn't seem violent to me. It seemed like a procedure.
I agree. It didn't bother me ethically, but
Yeah.
it just made me uncomfortable.
Right.
Yeah, seeing
this
anybody
huge-
loopy is always
Exactly.
like...
Well, ethically, I was sort of freaking out because I didn't know. And I was like, those Europeans could get away with all sorts of things, you know, and then I thankfully, like, I was like looking it up and trying not to spoil it. But I was like, if this
feel like
is
there's a lot
animal
more-
cruelty, I don't want to watch this movie.
I feel like they're stricter there than they are here, though.
I kind of agree.
Yeah?
Especially with, like, a lot of what's allowed. So much stuff is allowed here that's not allowed
That's true.
there.
That's true.
But it's interesting to think these are vets, right? These are people who are trying to help animals.
Which is why I think it's so interesting and upsetting that they're like totally fine sort of flinging around animal blood and eating raw. Like you'd think so many of them would be vegetarians and not want to be exploitative of animals in this way.
There's that really interesting debate right after that hazing sequence, right after she eats the rabbit kidney, or it's like forced into her
Yeah.
mouth, that they all go to lunch and they're all like still covered in blood. And they have this debate about
The monkeys.
monkeys.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
monkey
like about a monkey, if a
Yeah.
monkey gets raped, is that equal to a human getting raped?
Yeah, is she
and then she gets
traumatized?
called out on that.
Yeah, her peers are sort of horrified that
Right.
she's equating the two. And I feel like I would also be, I would horrify others by equating the two, but I don't think they're that different. I mean, we've decided that human life is more precious.
Right.
And so,
Well, it's an interesting debate, I think. I think it's very triggering because on the one hand, you're like, well, yeah, it would be traumatizing for anybody to get raped.
Yeah.
But in that specific circumstance, she's saying like, I think it's upsetting because it's like women are no more than a monkey. Like a woman and a monkey would feel the same instead of just being like, well, anyone who gets raped, whether you're human or not human. But there was something that upset me where it's like, oh, you're just saying like women and monkeys. Like you're just throwing it away is what
it's
it
weird
felt
because
like.
this is
a
just
little bit.
semantics. But to me, I'm like, instead of like, oh, women are just monkeys, I'm more like elevating monkeys to where it's like monkeys are just like women.
Right.
like animals
I
are
think
just
I
that's
think it's
exactly
true.
the 2 points of view that are
Yeah,
that
which-
we're seeing in the scene.
I
Yeah.
agree that it would be traumatic no matter who you are. I think in the scene, it feels like she's lowering women
Right.
to like what we think of as less.
Right. I get
Like
that, and I understand
pain
their
would be
horror.
less than.
But I kind of feel similarly where I'm like, who are we to decide that our lives are so much more important than...
I agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, generally our lifespans are longer. So there's that argument of like a woman might have to carry that shame for
Sure.
longer. But like, is that really how you measure the value of a life? Is its longevity?
But it's
Right. I
also
don't think so.
Yeah.
she's a freshman and doesn't know how to articulate her point right. I think is what is like the problem.
I really like her. Like, she's very easy to look at. She's delightful. And I like that she's principled. I remember years ago reading the Wikipedia and how she's like forced to eat the rabbit liver?
I think it's maybe it's a
I
kidney.
think it's a
Kidney.
kidney.
You said that. Right. You're right. But she's not really forced. She's definitely like pressured, but she could spit it out. She could refuse.
Yeah, I thought she was an interesting character, but I didn't relate to her because I found her so different than me.
In what
In
way?
a lot of, well, she's so internal, and she's so like going along with things like eating the thing where she says no so many times, and then eventually she does give in. Like there's so many things where she's just such a quiet character that it was harder for me to connect with her emotionally.
Yeah, I mean,
I thought she was great though. The actress
she was
did
like
an
a
amazing
goody
job.
two shoes. I kind of remember being like that. Like when we, especially as girls, we were like, at least I remember being this way, like primed to be a good student, to follow the rules, to like excel at my schoolwork. And like, that's exactly who we're presented with, I think, at the beginning of this film. And
Yeah.
they tie her principles, her vegetarianism, into that. And I found that part of her really easy to relate to, even though I don't think I related to her in other ways in terms
Yeah.
of like how she was like such a blank slate, I feel like, when she came into
Yeah.
school. But like, I don't agree. I think that was the conflict of that scene. Like, I don't think she could have just spit it out
You don't
because
think so?
because I think that's the point of her
Yeah.
principles getting challenged, right? And like, that is the power of peer pressure, is that
Right.
you as an individual, as a principled individual, will just get like chinks in your armor
Yeah.
from moments like that.
Well,
and
it's
on top of
also
it, it was
the
her
whole thing-
sister.
Going to
Right.
college. That's the whole point of college. Is like you go and you leave your small town when you're safety net and you're challenged by other people.
See, it's interesting because I was never a goody two shoes, so I don't relate to that. But I am an animal lover, and so I relate to that. I mean, I was vegetarian for a decade, and then I don't eat well enough or take care of myself well enough to continue that. But I am particular about where my meat comes from, and I don't eat pig because I have a dog, and pigs are smarter than dogs, and I have a lot of like. So I felt very connected to her just in this like. I felt like she really believed in something, and I respected that.
Well, and I think this is going to be probably the worst thing I say on this podcast, but I think I am a goody two shoes, and I grew up, so I relate to that. And the one thing, and this is like maybe an American thing, or maybe it's because I'm from the South, but the one thing that I didn't really relate to was like, as a goody two shoes, I just want everyone to like me. And so there's a thing of like being such a goody two shoes, and then like, this is the worst thing I'll say. It's like, she's not smiling, where it's like, I think in America, you have to smile more, or you're like picked on, or you know what I mean? There was part of that
I think
where
you're
was
right
like,
that that's an American thing.
where I felt like it would be so much easier if you just like smiled when you did it.
And I think of them
I
as so
hate saying
separate
that.
because I always smiled and was a people pleaser, but I was not a goody two shoes. Like I think of them as different things. One is like
I was all three.
Okay.
I agree. I think that they are different things, and I definitely think it's a very much an American quality to
smile.
to smile as a way of being liked, but it's also a people pleaser quality,
Yeah.
which is like an actor's quality.
Right. Or also for me, it was a very female thing of like your job is to make other
100%.
people comfortable and they're uncomfortable if you're not smiling. And I went through a period of my life where I actively stopped smiling, which sounds so horrible to say.
But it's great.
Yes. And I had a friend who was like, that's awful. I love that you're always smiling. And it's like, but I don't want it to be by default.
Yeah, I don't want to be smiling
Yeah.
for you. I want to be smiling for me.
Yeah, I want to do it when I mean it. It felt
Totally.
like just becoming a more genuine person as opposed to like this automatic response.
But I mean, in terms of her likability, like I have to say that I really admire the European or at least the non-American instinct to like not have to make her likable in that way.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that she's likable just because she's principled
Yeah.
and innocent and like, you know, that she does kind of stick up for herself, right?
Yeah.
Like in the hazing, she's like, I'm a vegetarian, I won't do that. Or, you know, she
and then
tries
her
to go to
sister.
her room
I know, I was going to say
earlier.
that's one of the most heartbreaking moments because it's like
Yeah.
she'll tell you and then the
then she's
sister's
like,
like,
"No."
nope. Yeah. No, you eat it. This is
Yeah.
how it goes.
I'm not a vegetarian. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Ugh, that
I know.
scene is
I found her very
heartbreaking.
That was
likable, but
disgusting.
for the same reasons where I was like, she's strong. And that's why I'm like, I wanted her to continue to stick up for herself. But you're right. Peer pressure is a very real thing and she lasts a surprisingly long time. And then it's harder when it's from the family, when her sister's like, just eat it.
Right.
And one of the things, like, going kind of on this journey of watching all these movies is seeing stuff like this. I like being exposed to things that I do think are challenging about the idea of, like, why do I think she's so unlikable? Because she's not smart. You know,
Right.
it's like, it's
You're
interesting
facing your
stuff
own
to
internalized misogyny.
to like be like, I'm not really liking her. Why?
It's
And,
also
like,
what
does
you're
that
cultured
mean?
to. I think that's really
Yeah.
interesting. And I
Yeah.
will say that that's kind of why, like, I had a really bad habit as we were talking about what movie to pick that, like, I couldn't choose.
I relate
That's
to
definitely
that,
one of my
too.
New Year's resolutions is to, like, get
More decisive.
is to like make smaller decisions quicker. Like it
Yeah.
wasn't that, you know, we could have talked about so many movies, but at the end of the day, what really pushed me over the edge for this movie was that it was like a female director. I was like, okay, if we're going to be
Yes.
talking about
And
movies,
writer.
Yes.
I'm just going to choose to highlight a female writer director.
Yeah.
And I think that if only we had grown up with more films by female directors, we might not have that same perception.
Right.
Right.
100%.
And we also might not be like, I should choose one that's because it would just be a 50-50 thing.
Exactly.
Women are directors, men are directors. So we just choose a movie we like. And thankfully, I don't think this is like you like it more because you kind of have to let it go because she's a woman. It's like, no, the movie's super strong. And I love that it's directed by a woman.
Yeah.
But it is a thing that's unfortunate where we kind of, you know, I really like how feminist this episode is becoming.
Well, and it's also
This
like
is a feminist film. Like I
Yeah.
think that there's
the
no
sister's an asshole.
Yeah.
In my opinion, the mother's an asshole.
Totally.
So it's nice to have like, and I think sometimes you get this more from female directors being like, women don't all have to be likable.
Exactly. I think that this is a really cool feminist film and not in like a pink tie a bow on it,
Right.
capital F feminist. Like it's
Yeah.
feminist by just showing how complicated women are and by showing how disgusting
Yeah.
women are and
Right.
just by calling attention to our bodies in a way that is gross.
And having this like carnal thing being accepted for women where usually that's like a masculine thing.
Totally
Well,
exploring
and also
sexuality that way.
The
Yeah.
sister being like, you don't have a Brazilian wax, and like shaming
That
her.
seems so good.
That's the most
But you know what I
terrifying
mean?
thing.
Like the idea
Yes.
of just of somebody who you look up to. This main girl's not even having sex or anything. Like,
Right.
why would she have a Brazilian wax?
Right.
And being like, I'm going to shame your body. I'm going to shame your experience. I'm going to turn you into me.
You know what's funny? I want to call out because I never thought of this before, but I was having Brazilian waxes way before anybody was touching me or I was having any sort of
Really?
sex. And I don't know what that's about. I don't know if that's Miami
I've
culture
never had
or just
one.
being a woman where it's like, I'm not supposed to be hairy. Or
Yeah, I never
what?
had a Brazilian, but like waxing regardless. I mean, do you guys think a man could have directed that scene in the same way?
I think it would have been more sexualized.
Yeah.
Interesting. I thought that scene was terrifying and also so funny. That
I
like
love
first
that scene.
slow zoom in with her like legs
Yes.
spread and like the synth.
Yes, it's so good. I'm also just like, I've never seen like a pubes scene.
Totally. I loved it. And it was terrifying. And like as
Yes.
soon as you understood where it was going when the wax wouldn't come off. So we're
That was the one that I
terrified.
made tiny. I
When-
made it tiny.
It's funny you say as soon as you understood where it was going because I still did not know where it was going.
Well, I just knew I was like one time, you know, it's
Oh,
like
yeah,
the
yeah,
the
that.
rule of three.
And then
was
it
like
gets
went,
stuck.
yeah.
I
First
thought you
time's
meant
easy,
where
second
it's
time's
going
easy.
of like losing a finger and then eating the
No,
finger.
I did not know it was going there, but I knew that like by the third time she's pulling the
Yes.
wax off, something's going to go wrong.
And I also have had that happen where I went to a waxer in Miami
No.
who like mostly did like eyebrows, but then they were like, "Oh, I can do your," and she
That person,
couldn't.
that's terrible.
Yep.
That's terrifying.
And it was awful. It was so bad, and I was like inflamed for.
That's
a
like
week.
one of those jobs where it's like, if you specialize in one area, don't think you can just do another area.
You should know enough to know that you can't do that.
Yeah, that's like if I'm a heart surgeon, I'm not like, I don't know, I could probably figure out the leg.
But like, I mean, that is the most basic real life female experience.
Yes.
And it is horrifying. So to be able to like turn a simple mundane moment like
Yes.
that into like that's the scariest scene. That's like one of the scariest scenes in the movie.
Oh, for
Yeah.
sure. I mean, I didn't like the scratching. The scratching really
I have a
upset me
few
even
that
more.
really scared me. But I think the point of, and I wasn't thinking about it while we were watching it, only now, of like men don't feel like they have to remove their body hair. I mean,
Totally.
I guess some gay men or some models probably do.
Well, or if you're like a swimmer.
Yeah, but that's
If it's for athletic
practical.
reasons.
It's
Yes,
culturally
exactly.
different. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no pressure
Right.
on men to have like a hairless crotch.
Right.
And it's so crazy that there's that pressure on us. And so I love
Well,
that
and it's
that
also,
becomes
like,
a horror scene.
It's not even just that pressure. It's like the same thing as like if you're too skinny, no, now you're too fat. No, you're,
Right.
you know,
Right.
it's because it's like you have to have a certain amount of hair removed. And if you remove more, then other people judge you for that one too, where it's like, oh, what, you're hairless? Like,
There's actually an interesting conversation about that.
are
in
you
the film.
a child? Like, is
Remember
your
when she
husband a
goes to the
pedophile?
nurse? So after the
Oh,
itching scene, the
jeez.
craft callback is
Yeah.
when she's at the nurse's and she's doing
Oh,
like
peeling the
I mean that is so that is like
right.
fresh off of the
Yeah.
craft, and I
Yes.
love that. Doesn't it seem so gratifying?
Yes,
Something
but also
about that.
painful.
I love that.
Painful, but
craft.
also like ooh, like look how it's
Satisfying.
coming off. But that's a total callback to the craft.
I totally didn't
But then
even think
after
of
that, the nurse like lights up a cigarette
Oh,
and
which I
gives her
love.
this speech.
I love that she just lights a cigarette in the
Totally.
exam room.
So
much.
French. She's talking about being othered in school.
Yeah.
She's talking about like this round, she calls her round or plump girl
Yeah.
who was like made fun of for that they couldn't find a vein. But like she came to the nurse's office and the nurse found a vein easily.
It sounds like they were pretending to not be able to find a vein
Exactly.
just to shame and humiliate
Exactly,
her.
just to shame her. And so she was aligning her experience with this girl's with Justine's experience and
Yeah.
saying, you know, if you don't want to be, don't fall victim to the peer pressure, keep your head down. And
Yeah. So do you think she's just very insightful? How do you think I guess she knows that she's eaten this raw food and now is having this reaction.
yeah.
Also, these adults that are just putting up with bullying.
Yeah.
Maybe that's her way of being like, this sucks, just get through it.
Yeah, like I said, it's very laissez-faire, right? There's no like the school nurse is not going to get involved in what's
Yeah.
happening. She's just giving her this bit of advice, which is like keep to yourself.
Yeah.
Don't succumb to the pressure.
And it's not overt advice. It's like very buried.
Yeah.
Like you extrapolate.
But that's very French to begin with. I think
yeah.
that's such a difference between like European or non-American cinema and American
Right.
is like we
not being heavy-handed.
Yeah, we
and-
tell things explicitly. We say what we mean, whereas in specifically this film, they're like letting you infer what
Yeah.
they mean.
which is generally better writing.
And I think it asks more of the audience. Like it means that the filmmaker trusts the audience to pick up on what they're trying to
Right.
say, and it's way more exciting to have questions and think as opposed to just being like fed.
Spoon-fed, totally.
Well, and it's also a confidence in being like, it's okay if not everyone gets it.
Yeah,
I'm
Yeah.
okay with that.
I
Yeah.
agree.
Like Jessica said, that the rash is so painful looking, and seeing her scratch even before she goes to the nurse, my
The
whole
sound of
body
it
is tensing up.
just-
And it lasts a really long time.
Yes.
Yeah, that's when at like a certain point I muted it. 'Cause
That's
I was
sort
like,
of my-
I'm gonna throw up.
My big takeaway of the movie overall is that it really lasts a long
especially,
time
like-
in those horrific scenes.
Yes.
They
One
stay
of
with
my
it.
things is like I always keep my nails really short because there is like a weird sound phobia I have with like nails scratching skin.
Did you notice the length of her nails?
No, but it was the sound of
Right.
it.
It was
which,
really
like, I
dry.
always-
You were right. It was like a dry
people,
rub.
Like when I get manicures and stuff, those people always make fun of me because they're like, your nails are are too short, like for me to give you a manicure, and
Which
it's
is
like,
also weird feminine
Right.
expectations.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Either way.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. It's like there's less work for you to do, just paint it. But yeah, and it's because I have like I want the skin on skin. I don't
You're
want the
terrified
nail on
of
skin.
scratching yourself.
Yeah.
And that whole scene was just I wanted her to take a cold bath. I wanted
Yeah.
her to put lotion
Yes,
on.
totally. I'm
Put
like, this
ice
is not
on
the
it?
way
What
to
are you
deal with
doing?
it. I have always bitten my nails my whole life, and I just recently have kind of stopped. And it is really scary now because I wear contacts, and taking them out is a whole different thing. And there are a few other things that where I've like hurt myself because I'm not used to having nails.
I thought that it was so cool and clever that, the scariest implement used was scissors. You know, everything else was like teeth and nails.
Yeah.
Which is so scary.
So much scarier.
Yeah. The makeup
God, the
artist.
cheek bite part.
Oh my gosh, I know the chunk
yeah.
of
Oh my
cheek.
gosh.
I mean, there's a lot of lip biting.
Yeah.
But the cheek
really
got me so much more than the lip, because it's like we all bite our cheek, or like bites around the mouth area are like part of being near teeth.
Yeah,
But like
it's
up
so,
there where the skin is so thin.
it's also, it looks so good. That's what I was gonna say. I don't know if it's a makeup artist or an FX team or like a combination.
It was all
but they need
practical
all
effects,
the
right?
awards.
I wanted her
Yeah,
to
it
get
had to be.
stitches. I was like, that you need to go see somebody.
Yeah.
What do you make of? Okay, there's one of the scenes that really got me was the vomiting. Was the first time she's gagging all that hair.
That
Oh,
was to
yeah.
me, I was like, this is The Ring. Because we just watched The Ring where she vomits up. I thought it was hair, but it's like it's a bunch of pieces to like a electrical
Right.
material. But it looks like long black hair coming out. And then when this one, I was like, oh, it's the same
It's
thing.
disgusting.
Yeah, it's really
So why
hard
is
to
she
watch.
vomiting up hair?
So it took me a while to connect it, but I think I don't know how you pronounce it. Trichophagia is like where you like chew on your hair and swallow your hair. And there is that scene where she's in the office and she's like chewing on her hair.
I didn't put those pieces together. I also kind of just took a leap there because I didn't know exactly what she was vomiting up. But you're right. She gets in trouble.
Yeah.
And she's like caught for cheating. And she's
Even
like
though
very,
she's not cheating.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't understand that
I think
sequence.
he's cheating on
he's
cheating off of her
Yeah,
work.
that scene I didn't understand.
Yeah, it didn't feel like it really served a purpose other than displaying her trichophagia.
I think that the purpose is, however successful or unsuccessful it was, is to show that she's like not doing as well. Is to show her principles unraveling and that she's no longer the goody two shoes and she's not even doing as well in school
Interesting,
as she
'cause
was in
I
the
thought,
beginning.
maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like I remember at one point her sort of covering her paper from
She
him.
was.
So she is still upholding her principles. She's not condoning cheating.
But something must have happened there because they turn in their tests and they clearly have the same exact answers or something.
Yeah.
And she is caught for cheating. But you're right. I didn't
thought
put
she
it together.
didn't cheat.
But there's also
Yeah.
that weird thing where she turns it in really fast. And then the teacher's like, well, this
is
answer's
wrong.
wrong.
Yeah.
And it's like so quick to stick it to her. And then when he has that whole speech, he's like, people like you are bad for the program because it's come so easy to you that you discourage really great doctors from like wanting to do it.
Yeah,
and
it felt kind
that
of like
whole
a different
speech
movie to me.
was rough
Yeah.
because I was just like, wow.
Yeah, I feel bad for her.
I felt bad for her, but I thought there were some problems with that sequence, but I understand the purpose of it. I think it's to show her like increasingly stressed, right, as she's chewing her hair,
Right.
and like increasingly doing worse in school
And not fitting in.
Yeah.
But it's also
Right.
just to see, like, I wonder if that scene would have been different if it was like a female teacher.
Yeah.
It's like to have a male teacher that had so much hostility for like a smart young woman. I took
Yeah.
in a way of being like, men.
And I think that what we're missing is that we needed to see her actually cheating. Like we needed to
Yeah.
see.
Yeah.
It was unclear to us that she had cheated, as
Right.
opposed to them just clarifying that she probably did.
Or
Because
maybe
then
off
when
of
she
your
throws
point-
him under the bus, I was like, did she throw him under the bus, or or is that true?
Yeah, and that never comes back either. I
Yeah.
thought that it was both. I thought it was true and she was throwing him under the bus. Like it was true, but she also was like, I'm not protecting this guy.
Yeah.
That's how I took it. But I think maybe it's also just that mounting stress of even when you're doing it right and you are being a good student and you're not cheating, there's all the peer pressure to fit in, and then there's still going to be like a scholastic pressure or like something from the higher ups that's like, nope, not good enough. And maybe all of those things have to come together to like really let her morals disappear to a certain extent. Although they
But that
never
scene was
fully
so terrifying.
disappear.
And remember how it ends? It ends with her meeting that other girl by the sink, and the girl's like, "It's much easier if you just gag with two fingers."
That's right.
Yeah.
How sad, like sad and
Yeah, and then it stays on that girl like fixing her hair, and again, kind of calling out this like feminine expectation. Can't
But
be
it's
too
also
fat,
like
can't
that,
be too skinny.
that girl being like, I'm helping you.
exactly.
Which is also just like,
I mean, that
she's
calls
not even
back to
saying
the
it in a
waxing
mean way.
scene of
She's
like,
saying it in a nice way.
these are the social norms, and
Right.
you've
The
got, this is what you
waxing
have to
scene.
do to fit in.
And the nurse kind of being like, this person was so ostracized for being overweight, and here's another girl who like overhears vomiting and is like, oh, this is a good way to do it.
Right.
Which
So
is also
sad.
funny, even if she had been, throwing up in a bulimic way, like you don't know how many fingers she was using.
Right.
But she
right.
so confidently tells
Yeah.
her the right way to do it.
I want to talk about the peeing scene.
Oh, that's the next thing in my notes
yeah.
too. I thought that scene was delightful.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, what's the point?
I think it was to get them to bond, and I think
Yeah.
it's playing on a very masculine way. You know, it's
Yeah.
like a very masculine trope is like comparing your dicks, and it's like a version of doing that, right? As these girls peeing and bonding in what's conventionally
Yeah.
a masculine way.
Yeah, I loved that scene.
And like the sister finally trying to like show her.
But like you
something,
can't do
right?
that, right? Like you can't do that, right? Well, one of the girls manages to, and the other pees on herself right away.
yeah.
So that made me think of I'm a huge fan of General Hospital, the soap opera, and Amber Tamblyn used to be on it with Vanessa Marcel. And I remember Amber Tamblyn in an interview when she was like starting to get famous, she said something where she was like, I learned on General Hospital how to pee standing up from Vanessa Marcel.
How funny.
Wow.
And that's all I could think of because that's the only time I'd ever heard of that was that them like being bored at General Hospital and her being like, let me show you how to do
I don't think you can. I don't think I would do it successfully. I think I would pee on myself.
So maybe this will be helpful to some listener, maybe not. I peed wrong like my whole life. I thought you sit down and then you push out your pee, and I didn't understand why people took a long time to pee because I was always a speed peer. And then I ended up having like weird, like this pressure on my bladder all the time, and I had to go to some physical therapy for it. And one of the things they teach you is like you have to relax, which all of my girlfriends are like, yeah, duh. I didn't know that you just like sit down and you relax and the pee comes out. Like I just always pushed it and forced it. And when I was doing that, I could. And there were times where I was like, am I a boy? Like, it felt like I could, and my stream was so concentrated. But now it's not that way.
Right, because you're relaxing. So I
Yeah.
see. That's the trick.
Yeah, I
So you
think
got to
so.
force the pee. You got to
Yeah,
speed
you
pee,
shoot
and then
it
it'll
out.
pop out.
But I really loved that scene.
Well, it's the one time the sister's so nice.
Right. It's like
And,
they're
like,
bonding.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like free. Whereas like, oh, the sister was rough for me.
Yes.
I
Especially
love
having
that.
a big sister. My sister, her whole thing was like, I can terrorize you, but nobody else can.
Funny.
Yeah.
So to see her like the sister, and maybe it's because their ages were closer. My sister's 7 years apart. Maybe it's because they're so close because she was kind of like, you're going to make me look bad if you don't eat
Right.
this.
She was.
Yeah. I also love that, the sister is a rough character. You don't always like her or root for her. So I love that it's not just black and white, that you get this tender scene of them peeing together.
Totally.
And she reminded me of Firuza Balk from The Craft.
Oh, funny.
I could see
I
that.
could see that.
They're both so hot, which, like, it's wrong to be objectifying women. But at the same time, I just, like, they're both so fun to watch.
Well, the roommate was hot.
What about that sexy roommate?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he was hot,
I loved
too.
him, and I love that scene when he's playing soccer shirtless and like talk about the female gaze. I mean, just
Yeah.
like the camera like will often just cut out his face and just
Yes.
like linger on his torso. And I thought that was
Yeah.
so cool. And then it will cut to Justine, who's like basically foaming at the mouth
Yes.
watching him.
Yeah, I loved that scene. And I loved it too as like her coming into her own and
Totally.
like starting to see men
Yeah.
differently.
Right.
And when she's dancing in front of the mirror, that scene was freaky.
That scene was
to that
good.
French female
Yeah.
rap song, and
Oh,
it's
that
like
was
a dirty
great.
rap song, and she's just like grinding to herself in the mirror.
That's the kind of thing where Jessica points these out in like possession movies where she's like, I would feel so silly having to like writhe and act
Yeah,
possessed.
as the actor, I'd be like,
In that scene, I'm like,
and so
as the
self-conscious.
actor, I'd be like, I don't want to dance like this.
I know you probably like put on headphones, and then once the music is like
Yeah.
in your ears and you can't hear anything,
That's
it
true.
becomes
It's
That's the way
almost
to
like
do it.
I feel like the kissing of the mirror would be so much more embarrassing than the dancing.
I agree.
Yeah.
'Cause it's like
Well,
she's
'cause that's not- it's
practicing.
gross.
It's
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
like it's almost masturbatorial. Is that the word?
Masturbatorial? Yeah.
Yeah, like she's fucking herself basically.
But that all happens. So that whole sequence is after an interesting point in the movie, which is at the doctor's office, right? They go to the doctor's office to ostensibly sew back on.
Yeah, so I
Yeah,
mean,
we should go back.
hopefully you should just watch this movie so you know what we're talking about. But the sister is going to wax her pubic area, but she can't pull off the second part, so she goes to get the scissors.
To cut it off because
Yes.
it's stuck.
And then how exactly does this happen?
She freaks out. She's like, "You're not getting
she, like,
scissors
kicks
by my
her.
vagina," and she kicks her.
And the scissors go flying and slice off her older sister's
Middle finger.
Ugh. And then
And she freaks. The sister
And then, like, the dog is also, like, there trying to, like, lick off the wax and get to the
Yeah.
finger. That's also
yeah, the placement of the dog,
horrifying.
you were like, what is the dog's involvement?
Exactly.
Yes. And then the older sister who loses her finger passes out.
Yeah, it goes into shock.
So now it's up to our protagonist.
To get help.
Yes. Justine has to get help. She calls and they presumably tell her to put the finger on ice, and she checks the freezer, quote unquote, or like the little mini fridge,
mini
and
fridge.
there's no ice. And now...
And she like sits down, and before you know it, she's like holding onto the finger, and it drips blood, and the reminder of blood entices her, and she
licks the blood
licks the
first
blood.
off her hand.
And then starts nibbling at the finger.
Yes.
And then her sister wakes up and sheds a tear, seeing her younger sister, eating her finger.
Which I'm surprised by the tear, because she does seem pretty supportive of it all.
Except it is her fucking finger.
It is her finger. That's true.
And then after that, so then we cut to...
Well, I want to stay on the finger for 1 second, just because I would imagine, even as someone who's like squeamish, like a scene of somebody nibbling on a finger, I don't know, there's something that sounds very campy about it. But it is treated so realistically.
Yeah.
And the way I feel like what I would assume I'd see is someone sort of like chomping on a finger. And instead, there's like the toughness of a steak where she's like trying to tear it off with her teeth.
She's nibbling at it very in small bites.
Very small bites, but she still has to like pull, like struggle to pull it with her teeth. And it's so realistic.
Well, she's not committed to just eating it.
Yes.
Because
but
there is the conflict of it's
that's
my
true
sister might
too.
need this.
I think that's a part of it. And part of it is that they're treating it like human flesh is not just like marshmallow.
Totally.
Which I feel like is what I've seen.
And her nail is like painted silver or something like that. It's really gross.
Yes.
But that's what I love about the movie in general, is that it's super grounded.
100%.
And I love that moment when you first see her sitting against the cabinets with the finger, and then this like synth comes on, and it's like this like and you understand the conflict that she's about to have, and it's both grounded and also like a little funny, and then terrifying
and erotic. It's like several things at once.
But the real bummer of that scene, and what makes me hate all these fucking people, is that she blames the dog, and the dog gets put down because doesn't the dad or someone say like
once they have a taste for human blood,
exactly,
which in hindsight,
which now they all know,
all know. Why don't they?
And they're vets.
Yeah.
I'm like screaming, sorry.
Well, it's a whole there's that whole question of like, why didn't the parents tell them?
Yeah,
but it's all so taboo. There's something about it. Like I don't know, but what I'm inferring is that it's like so taboo that every man for himself, kind of like that is the lesson at the end of the movie, is that Alexia didn't figure out she didn't have a system. Isn't that what they say? What he says to her at the end is like, everybody comes up with a system to figure out how to make it work for themselves.
Solution.
Right, a solution.
I'm sure you'll find a solution.
Yeah.
And somehow Alexia didn't, or she did for a while, which was like killing people on the side of the road.
And then she goes crazy on the roommate.
Yeah.
And eats off most of his leg.
Scene. I love that scene so
It was very Rocky Horror.
Wait, where she wakes up and finds...
I just think that the practical effect of that, the leg and the fucking bone and the flesh, I think about that a lot. And I have a scene, I wrote another... So I got into this movie because I've been working on a cannibal movie for a while. And I wrote a short, and I'm developing it into a feature. But inspired by Raw, like the penultimate moment in the short is a person's leg getting... just like sliced into and eaten off, because I love that effect.
These practical effects are crazy good. Everything looks so real. One thing that's not an effect that freaked me out before we get to his leg, I think it happens earlier. It has to happen earlier, I think. Yes. I'm confusing myself. But the part that the interviewer asked about, where she was like, oh, that says more about you than me, is where it's finding Justine, and it's like one of those atmospheric scenes with all the extras, and it's a girl licking a guy's eyeball.
Oh my gosh, yes!
Just
I
on the
didn't
way.
notice that one.
Oh my gosh.
I noticed that. That was so gross.
It's so unnerving.
She's licking it like around the rim.
Yes, but I think her tongue is like touching the actual ball.
It is.
Yes.
But she's just like slowly licking down the rim. It was like the intro to the second rave scene, where at this point we see that Justine is very different, and she's developed this hunger, and she's tasted the flesh that the dad talks about. And
I wonder if Jessica had the screen tiny there, so she didn't have to
part
see
of it, I watched this at work.
Okay.
Guys, I had to work. So I wasn't as like maybe attentive to details.
I made Amir watch that part. I was like, just watch one thing.
it was really gross. And it's like a really benign moment. It's just an
Yes.
intro to that second
Exactly.
party.
It's not part of the story.
Right.
It's like just atmosphere
Whereas,
on the
like,
way to
for
seeing
me,
Justine's
Brad
change.
came in during the waxing scene and was like, what's going on? And I was like, oh, because I read the Wikipedia. I was like, oh, she's about to cut off her finger and the other girl's going to eat it. And he's like, what is this? Like, he had no idea what was happening.
So terrifying.
Which I also love. Now I know what you mean, but when you're saying in the waxing scene, we all know where this is going. Like, I love that idea that, like, oh, she's waxing her bikini. This is going to lead to finger eating.
Something's going to go wrong.
Whereas, like, for me, the wax part was so rough. I was like, if she rips that skin off.
Oh,
I was waiting for it to be a super gross shot of like the skin
coming off.
Which wouldn't have done anything for the story, but just as a
It would have
woman,
just been
you're
a gross
so
out
scared.
shot. Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, I think now having seen it, I see how this film calls upon Rabid, the Cronenberg film, and there's an early scene in that of skin grafting, and it's just gross
Yeah.
seeing tweezers, pulling off a layer of skin. And I thought that that's where that was going to go.
In that same scene, she kisses a rando's neck and he just like swats her like a fly, which I found very funny. She's just like this like minor annoyance. Like she's just
Well, some girl is like, that's my boyfriend.
and then she lunges for the girl.
Yeah, and she kisses her too. Yeah. I mean, I think it's so brilliant the way that the film aligns sexuality and desire with carnivorous hunger.
Yeah.
And it makes you like, we can all relate to that. We can all relate to what it is to be hungry, whether for meat or otherwise.
Yeah.
But by seeing the dawning of her sexuality and thinking about it as hunger is so interesting and kind of a way that I don't think female sexuality is ever portrayed.
Totally. It's like it's like a sexual awakening coming of age story told via cannibalism.
Yeah. And like that she is so horny that she just can't get enough. And we really never experience female. I don't want to say never, but it's very rare that female sexuality is explored. And it's also,
it's very European.
it's very European.
There's that great documentary called This Film Is Rated or something. And it's a whole documentary about the ratings in America. Now, that's not what it's called, but I can't remember. And it's all about how sex scenes, if a woman is having an orgasm, are X or an R or whatever. And if it's a male having an orgasm, it's PG-13 or R.
Which is just such a shame because I mean, like, I remember so much of my coming of age of like thinking about when I was like later in my 20s and even more recently in my early 30s, like understanding that so much of the dawning of my sexuality was tied to shame, was tied to like what I was supposed to be doing. And I remember being very kind of comfortable with whatever I was exploring when I was young, but everybody else made me feel that I was wrong for feeling that way. And even like the men in my life, the women in my life, as comfortable as I felt with it, I was made to feel uncomfortable. And I think that this film does a cool job of exploring like that it is a natural hunger.
I also like that the object of her lust, like the primary object of her lust, is her gay roommate. Because for me, there's something that sort of shuts down. Like if I find someone attractive and then I find out that they're gay, I'm like, okay, that's not for me. I'm not their type. And for her, it is that like raw, carnal, unstoppable sort of energy that it doesn't matter. There's no logic playing into it. It's just sexual drive and urge.
And that scene when they have sex.
Oh, she bites her arm when she comes.
Yeah. And she's like a rabid dog. And he is like trying to pull. He's like into it, but she keeps lunging for his neck, wanting to bite, and he can sense something's weird, and he keeps.
I think because he was at the party or he heard about the lip bite.
Well, that's how it starts. Is he was like, was that guy forcing himself on you? What happened there? And he was like trying to unpack her sexuality, and she keeps asking why, and he's like, well, I just want to understand you.
Yeah,
but I think that's also he instinctually was like,
I gotta
she's
bite her.
Dangerous. Yeah.
But she is like, unlike her sister, she bites herself. Right? Like that's where her principles continue, is that she knows she doesn't want to hurt him and so she hurts herself. But that shot, that is like classic zombie movie shot, right? Of just like her bloody teeth and her eyes, her
like
terrifying
looking up.
eyes.
Yeah. I like also that they're sort of both exploring their sexuality, like using each other to explore their sexuality. It feels like it would be a mutually beneficial situation until Alex intervenes and it becomes lethal.
Right.
The one time I covered my eyes is when Justine pulls the bandage off her face. It was the only time that got me. I was like keeping my eyes pried open.
That bandage needed to stay on. It was raw.
Also, like you need Neosporin or something on that.
Yeah.
She was not treating the wound well.
No. Also, I feel like it's a comment on her lack of vanity that she like doesn't really seem to care that she has a chunk missing from her face.
What about that fight scene between the sisters?
Oh yeah,
that was bonkers.
It literally ends with both of them having their mouths wrapped around the other's arm.
Yeah.
And you see, like, the other students are treating them like zombies, like in a zombie movie, where like they're trying to like get them by the back because they don't want to get bitten.
Yeah, or like animals, the way you might like lift a dog by the scruff of its neck.
All I could think of was like,
fight.
how they're not going to make it in the school after this fight. After this fight scene, they're going to be ostracized in either a way of like, look at those weirdos, or in like, dude, don't fuck with those girls.
Yeah. I think it might be the latter, which is kind of cool.
They will bite you.
Yeah, don't force feed her any raw rabbit kidney.
Ugh.
She'll take a bite out of your face.
There's a lot of beautiful homages too. I mean, we didn't even talk about that. There's a Carrie homage with the blood.
Dumping of the blood, yeah.
And I don't think it's very, it's not like on the nose, but when she washes her sister the blood off in the shower, you like zoom in on the blood at the bottom of the shower at the drain.
Another
Carrie.
Carrie.
Psycho, yeah.
Oh, Psycho.
Well, that's
I was thinking of the period.
Ooh,
in Carrie.
yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, both. There's a lot of overlap because thematically.
And it's really beautifully done.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not really like, I'm becoming much more of one in doing this podcast, but I was never really an FX person. I would sort of just buy it. And now I'm like, wow, that really drives it home. Like, I wonder what her relationship was like with the makeup artists, how involved she was in crafting that. Because again, like the finger moment or the roommate's leg, like all of that stuff has to be so grounded and believable. And it all looks so real.
And I didn't do research, but it looks practical.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
Which is also a big callback to Cronenberg, who was like famous in his early films for really gnarly but practical effects. I mean, The Fly is all practical. And I think that it won an Oscar for for special effects.
Yeah, practical is always better.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, yeah.
It's freakier.
I agree.
Yeah.
Even if it looks a little unrealistic, it's still freakier.
Yeah, and there is something about it being tangible.
Like Ghostbusters, where it's like the stuff doesn't necessarily hold up. It looks so much better than like even stuff today, I feel like. Because there's something about watching where I'm like, this is a video game.
Yeah.
That I don't like nowadays.
I'm thinking
like,
about it
fake.
in the short film that I'm working on. If anybody is like a props specialist or a practical effects specialist listening, I'm thinking a lot about like how do you get the most out of some kind of body horror? Like I've got like a stabbing, and we like rip a prawn's head off at one point, and I'm like trying to figure out how to give the on-screen satisfaction of that without actually doing it.
That's nice. I'm glad you don't want to.
Well, yeah.
Also, sound is a huge part. Like, you have to figure out what sounds like someone biting into someone's cheek, and how do you, I'm really into the sound of it.
I think that you have more time after the fact to play with the sound.
That's true.
It's like as you go into production, you have to figure out, okay, what am I going to get the most of that's going to be satisfying? And what I love about body horror and practical effects is it's a really short take you need. Like you don't need to see anything for long. It's just a quick glimpse and it's terrifying.
Which I think is part of what I'm so impressed by in this movie is you are seeing her scratching at her rash for a long time, and you are seeing her chew the finger for a long time. So it has to be more convincing because you're spending a long time there. And it is. Also, I love more comments on femininity is when she's like awkwardly teetering in her high heels before we get to the, Brazilian waxing.
And the girl the girl we don't know telling her that she has to dress slutty.
Right. Oh, yeah. Something I read but hadn't noticed is that the unicorn shirt she's wearing in the beginning when she's like innocent is also the one that Alex is wearing at the end covered in blood.
Oh, funny. I didn't notice that.
She says it's sort of a comment on a few things. One being that sisterly thing where you just take each other's clothes. And another kind of this, probably the destruction of a certain innocence.
Cool.
So then, yes, at the very end, the sister's in jail for having killed
Adrian.
Thank you. And the dad is talking to Justine saying, I don't blame you. I don't even blame your sister.
Well, because Justine he's reading it on her and he's like, don't blame yourself.
Exactly. And you're not at fault. And actually, neither is Alex. And that's the first time that I really notice that there are bites out of his lip.
Exactly, me too.
Yeah.
I only noticed it then.
Because you meet him earlier, but you're not that close on him. And it's also context, because people have like, is it a cleft lip?
Right.
Yeah, and you see them and they're normal.
And then he says something like, I remember the first time we were at school and your mom kissed me. Mm-hmm. And I mean, and then it kind of makes you wonder whether like that's how he got it, because
I think so. That's what I took away.
I also wonder the choice to have him explain this and not have the mom explain it.
Yeah, that is very
interesting to me.
Maybe, I bet you, I mean, I wonder if that actor just like had that lip
think?
scar and it was
we
just
should
like
look him up.
effective. Yeah.
But
I
it's
wonder.
interesting to like take the mom out of it.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's just because visually you want to see the scarification.
Oh, that's true.
And so it's probably just a practical thing. But I do like the question of like emotionally, shouldn't it be the mom?
Yeah, since it's like I'm like you, where we can identify together.
But then again, to your point that she's like not very expressive and not a big talker, I could see the mom is the same way, and the dad is actually more like the sensitive soul, the one who's like able to articulate emotion.
I have a feeling that you're spot on with the ease of being able to unbutton his shirt and it not being two-sided, right? That it's like totally devoid of sexuality.
Wait, what were you going to say when you were like, I wonder if that's from her kissing him, or what were you going to say?
Well,
Or if just the actor has it.
Is that how he gets the taste of flesh? You know what I mean? Is that he understood that his wife or like his girlfriend at the time had a taste for the flesh when she chewed his lip off.
Yeah.
But is that how he gets it?
I don't think he has it.
I don't think he has it.
But he has the
I think that's the wife.
Yeah.
But he has those scars.
From the wife taking
I think
bites out of
that's
his
from
chest.
the wife having sex.
Interesting. I assumed that was the same kind of rash
Like that she...
Justine
Oh,
gets.
yeah, my
interesting.
interpretation was it's like a female gene.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
And he's sort of he's sacrificing himself in a sense to his wife.
I didn't think about it that
Yeah,
way.
that he loves her, and that's their because he says you'll find a solution. And I thought that was their solution, is
Yeah.
that the wife takes
Nibbles.
bites out of parts that are
Yes,
covered.
that's what I thought too. This is why I love getting to like talk about movies and dissect it, because there's so many different takes on everything.
And my favorite thing about a movie is leaving you with a question. It's like
Yeah.
leaving you wondering more as
Yeah.
opposed to, laying it all out on the table for you and then that's it. You're done with the movie.
Yeah.
You kind of lean in and you're like, what? What? And you just have these
Yeah.
questions circling your
I
mind.
do. I feel like the dad seems like a good guy. And that's why it's so weird to me that Alex pulls Justine and shows her the photo of their parents and they're hazing and they're covered in blood. And I'm like, why wouldn't they warn them? Even aside from her basically being a latent carnivore, it's like, I mean, well, both. A latent, cannibal. Thank you. Just that she's like a goody two-shoes and an animal lover and like, hey, they're going to dump animal blood on you and force you.
Right.
Like there's no warning or...
It's like a sins of the parent. It's like about an error of omission
Yeah.
that they thought that they could protect her forever.
Well, it's also like a repression almost
Yeah.
too of in Carrie that the mom doesn't say, "Hey, you're going to get a period and it's normal," is like just kind of this being like they'll figure it out
Right.
when they go through
But
it.
to be so protective of her accidentally having meat, I would attribute to she doesn't want this cannibal part of her to be activated.
right, yeah.
So then why...
Only to some degree, she still sends her to that school.
That's what I'm
you
saying.
know?
Yeah. So why like be so adamant about delaying it by a few days if you know that she's going to this school where she's going to be almost force-fed animal parts?
Maybe because she doesn't want to be around it.
Yeah, get her out of sight.
You figure it out.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe. A lot like women's sexuality. Or at least in that's again a religious thing, but like, not having conversations about sexuality being normal.
Totally.
Or,
Mine too. And it wasn't even religious. It was just like no conversation.
right.
Yeah, same. And my mom's not religious, but
Yeah.
it just it's an interesting thing in our society of like just not really explaining female
because
sexuality.
we don't. Yeah. I mean, we come from, it's like
I got the
remnants
period
of
talk.
Yeah, but I think it's a remnants of a
didn't.
puritanical society of like, we don't like, it'll be easier if it all goes unsaid and you figure it out on your own,
Right.
which is exactly what happens to Justine in this movie.
Right. And also, I had the Carrie experience with my period where I was like, I'm bleeding, I'm dying.
Me too.
Really?
Terrified. And I had
Having
it young. I
briefly
got my
met your
period
parents,
young.
I would not have guessed that. I also got mine really young.
We
I
had
was
it
like
in
the
school.
first one in my class.
We had a Saturday where all the girls had to come in. I think it was in 4th or 5th grade, or maybe it was 5th grade. All the girls had to come in with their mothers. And it was like a Saturday, and they made us all come in, and we sat down in this room, and they showed us like the black and white movie where they explain getting your period. It's like
I kind of wish I got
been
that.
forever.
Yeah, me too.
And
It
then
was
at
really
the end,
scary.
every girl had like a little lunch sack, like paper bag, and inside was like 2 huge maxi pads that were like ridiculous. What kind of flow do you think we have?
I
But it
know.
was that, and it was like it was basically almost no one had gotten it yet.
Yeah.
So it was like
I mean,
the
I just remember it
preparation.
was a little bit of spotting. It was blood, but it was terrifying.
Yes.
I just remember it hurt so bad.
The first,
I had
mine get painful, but the
horrible
first
cramps
one,
before I
I don't
had
remember
remember.
mine. Yeah, I don't remember them being painful when I was younger. Only
I mean, it was overshadowed by the sudden blood of it all.
exactly.
No, I just remember laying in my bathtub, like, fully clothed because I was like, I'm dying. I'm in so much pain. And, like, I'd go to the nurse and be like, I need to go home. I'm having cramps. Like, I remember having really bad cramps.
Yeah.
Because also you couldn't carry, like, you weren't supposed to have medicine on you or, like, ibuprofen or something when you're, like, in 6th grade.
Right. I just remember waking my mom up in the middle of the night being like, I have to go to the hospital. I can't stop bleeding. I don't know why.
There's a funny South Park joke where I think it's the uncle or the uncle's friend says, like, I don't trust women because I don't trust anything that bleeds for 5 days and doesn't die.
Yeah, right.
Which I was like, fair. Yeah. That is an interesting point.
Fair.
Okay, who are you in this movie?
Ooh, who am I in this movie? I mean, probably Justine.
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
I'm not Alexia.
There is a part of Alexia that I think, even though she's mean, that is just so cool. She's so like
She's a cool-
unapologetically
yeah.
herself.
But I don't know. That's a tough question. I guess I am more Alexia than I am Justine because I don't think that I was that repressed and shy. And I guess I am more carnivorous and desirous than I am repressed, which would make me Alexia. Who are you?
I don't know. Maybe I'm the dad.
I thought that for a second too. Helpful.
I'm helpful, but I'm not
Sacrificial.
super assertive.
Yeah. But he is able to talk and like express. He's
Right.
steps up in a way the mom doesn't.
Over a cigarette. Everybody in the
Yeah.
French movie finally lights a cigarette and just
God, this movie
tells
made me
us
want
the
a
truth.
cigarette.
I had one right after. I was like, I'm not going to eat, so I'm at least going to have a cigarette.
There have been like a handful of times over the past few months where like I'll see someone smoking on screen and I just want a cigarette so bad. And I'm
yourself
like,
have
is
one.
that going to be bad if I buy a pack of cigarettes?
Oh, no.
I think I might be Adrian, where I'm like, I'm not sure what I want. And then I'm trying to figure it out. And that gets me in trouble.
I loved Adrian. I thought he was like
Yeah,
so
he was
self-assured
cool.
and he was like confident in his sexuality, but he was also a good friend.
But he also is, I feel like he could have, I don't know. It's fair. That's where I think it gets messy in that moment where
They have
Justine is finding her sexuality and maybe he sees himself as a tool for that. But he also is like, I know that I don't want to be with you. And maybe that's not the way to experiment with this.
But like, isn't that college?
yeah, I didn't go. But like, I think in a sense
That's
it's,
college.
it's kind of disrespectful, but I think it's more selfish. And I think I can definitely be selfish. And I could see myself being like, but I'm horny right now.
Exactly.
Well, and I
That's
think
what it
a
is.
lot of
Yeah.
like early sexual experiences are selfish.
Yeah, totally.
Because it's not necessarily someone that you want to be having sex with. You just don't want to be the one not having sex.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like,
And
I should
also-
have an experience, I guess, with you.
Yeah, why not? I also
Yeah.
relate to his kind of, on the one hand, being like, your sister's like really mean and rude. And then as soon as the sister's like, hey, he's like, oh, she's
Yeah,
so
I'm
cool.
into her. Yeah.
I get that.
Yeah, I thought that was like a cool plot twist or like
Yeah.
a way to move the plot along is when Justine starts to get jealous of their relationship.
I like that too. It's subtle. Again, we're letting the audience kind of read between the lines, but
Right.
it's not, they don't hit you over the head with it, but it serves a purpose and I'm
Right.
into it. Do you have anything you want to promote?
I will take a tip from my husband, who is constantly promoting his Venmo account on your Boyfriend Amir's podcast. So
That's
you can
great.
find me on Venmo at Marina-Michelson.
Amazing.
I'm on Instagram at Marina824, and I'm trying to make this movie. So if you do want to throw me some Venmo cash for my
Hey.
movie, I will take it.
That's so smart.
Yeah,
Are you on
I
Twitter?
want to see it. It sounds
Me
really
too.
Yeah,
good.
at Marina824. Yeah, watch
Okay.
out for Stagiaire. And I mean, I'm not officially crowdfunding, but we can call this crowdfunding if you find me on Venmo.
Okay, great. And if, when it's up and you want us to share, we'll promote the links.
Yeah,
and
please.
Yeah.
show people where to find it. And you can find all of that through He's Right Behind You podcast on Instagram. Maybe one day we'll set up an email, but we haven't yet.
Instagram works.
Yeah, we don't need an email. Just DM us.
Next week, we're doing The Crush.
Alicia Silverstone.
Yes,
Yeah.
the debut of Alicia Silverstone.
Yeah, she's great. Do you want to tell people why they should leave us a review and give us 5 stars?
Please. I'm also going to take a tip from Bill. This is what he does on his podcast. Is
Okay.
He just begs and says,
Oh,
please, please, please leave them a review and give them a 5-star rating.
How can you say no to that?
I know, please, just beg, please.
That was delightful.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for
Marina.
having me. This was so much fun.
It was so fun. All right, see you guys later.
Bye.